welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 88th episode, our guest is Carlos Dengler. You first heard Carlos Dengler in episode 87 of the podcast. Carlos Dengler is a working actor and musician in New York City. He is currently working on his memoir detailing his time spent as bass player and keyboardist for the alt-rock group Interpol from 1998 to 2010. After leaving the band, Carlos enrolled at Stella Adler's Studio of Acting, and then was fortunate to have been accepted to NYU Grad Acting, where he received his MFA in acting in 2015. Since graduation, Carlos has been working in the theater, creating and launching a successful one-man show called Homo Sapiens Interruptus for the New York International Fringe Festival of 2016, and cast in a recent production of A Babylon Line by the great playwright Richard Greenberg at Lincoln Center Theater, featuring actor Josh Radnor in the lead. In early 2016, Carlos appeared briefly on the Late Night with Seth Meyers show, filling in on bass guitar with the 8G Band, the Seth Meyers house band. Carlos has also spent time crafting his approach to memoir writing. He was recently published by the literary magazine N+1 with an essay, Stories of Excess. He is currently finishing up the first stages of a publishing deal for his upcoming book, detailing his time in the band, his personal life and childhood, and his observations upon leaving behind life in the music industry. Carlos is an avid tweeter with an unabashed progressive liberal swing to his thought, and is a lay but voracious consumer of current political thought. You can follow him there at Dengler Carlos. And now, onto the show.
Hello?
Carlos?
Yes.
Hey, it's Rob.
Hey, Rob, how are you doing?
Good, good. Is this a good time still?
This is still a great time.
Good. Yeah.
One warning. I gotta give you a warning.
Okay, go ahead.
Something funky has been going on with my, something about my phone. I put in the earphone. The jack sometimes disconnects me.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So if I accidentally fumble and it cuts us off, why don't you just call me right back?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem.
And if it keeps happening, I'll just put it to my ear. But I'm going to try it for now.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll let you know if I can't hear you or it hangs up. So. Yeah,
it just kind of disconnects everything.
Oh, okay. All right. I won't take it personally, and I'll try again.
Yeah. Yeah, please don't.
But yeah. So this always happens with good guests. We think of things to talk about after it's done. And the thing that you told me that you were thinking about talking about was this whole what do we want to call it even?
Sexual misconduct, sexual abuse.
Yeah, just bad behavior.
Bad behavior, sure.
Horrible behavior. Just today, I only got off work at 5 p.m. and I haven't looked at social media for 3.5 hours, so who knows what's happened since then. But today, Matt Lauer fell from grace, or, well, that's not what happened, but he didn't fall from grace. But in a lot of people's eyes, he fell from grace. People that held him in esteem, he has fallen from grace. And Garrison Keillor was fired today also. So two just giants of media, really. I can't tell you how long those people occupied places in my childhood unwittingly. So, this is not isolated. Of course, this is a wave that's happening all over in every industry. Entertainment seems to be, particularly in politics, of course, entertainment and politics seem to be two realms that seem to be particularly hard hit, but we, of course, know that this behavior happens in every industry in some way. One thing I want to know is, do you think the industries that this is coming out now have specific things about them that lend themselves to this behavior? Obviously it does, right? In certain respects.
Yeah, I think any industry, because of just the way businesses are organized via statuses, like you have bosses, you have supervisors, and you have to answer to them. So there's going to be a power differential between people who are working under the same company. And because of that, and then when you combine that with, I think I don't know, for some of us it's unconscious. I would probably say for most men it's unconscious, but there are some conscious ones too. The advantages that are afforded to men just by virtue of them being men, particularly white men, so-called patriarchy. Then, if we couple that with the inherent power differentials within companies, you have like a recipe in the workplace for all of this stuff to be happening. And I wouldn't say it's just entertainment or politics. I think it's just across the board. Any kind of large company that you're working in will have these sorts of occurrences, and I'm sure they're happening. Not everyone's going to speak out about, their supervisor, because the audience is not going to be very high for, let's say, you work at McDonald's, and you're just, saying that the general manager there has been touching your behind. That's not exactly as newsworthy as, let's say, somebody throwing allegations at Matt Lauer. But the essence is the same, and the behavior is the same, and it's, if you look at it from that standpoint, and if you look at it from all those dynamics, you see that this is probably happening everywhere.
Right. Oh yeah, no doubt. And I think you're right to describe it as a watershed moment. And I think it's interesting that you called it a sexual revolution. And really, I almost see it as just, maybe this is the first time that women see other women being believed in public about things that they've apparently gone through that I, as a man, have no concept of.
That's the revolution.
Yeah.
What you just said. It's the being believed part that is the revolution about this. I think up until now, there's been this kind of like, but kind of idea around all of this. Like, yes, we know men are horrible. Yes, we know men do bad things, but, and then, you can fill in the ellipses what you want. The revolution now is that we're taking the but out of that, and we're not making it, we're making it, we're saying, you have an allegation, and we're taking that seriously right now. So I think that's sort of the cultural tide, the thing that none of these things would be happening if women did not finally feel some kind of permission and safety and security, where there was none before. And I personally feel that the Access Hollywood tape was probably what started it, or maybe not what started it, but perhaps what kind of set into motion what we're seeing today. I think that was such a triggering event in the public consciousness for women who have all heard those kinds of words before, and then to have the additional slap in the face of the election, I think that was sort of like the finally no more kind of moment with all of this.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to me it feels like a torrent, but it's really not a torrent. All it is it's just this backlog of things that should have been, aired or adjudicated or stomped out or whatever way back when, but it wasn't the same back then. It's this way now, and now these things can be brought to the light, but it seems like a lot. It's just every day. Who will it be tomorrow? I'm almost worried, because I'm going to put this out on Friday, that this will be irrelevant. There will be like 48 hours.
Back in the day when Matt Lauer and Garrison Keillor were the news, there's been 4 guys since then.
Yeah.
I mean, that there's like tons of guys that are just quaking, speaking to lawyers. I mean, before the Louie C stuff happened, I was conjecturing to peers about that Tig Notaro did an interview where she explicitly said, I hope Louie C.K. is taking care of himself, or something along those lines.
Right.
He had been infamous up until that moment, but I think, it was sort of like the "for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee" kind of moment for him. And I would imagine that he probably knew it and might have even been able to try to do something about it before these things came to light. So who knows what other cases like that might be going on right now, where they may be successfully silencing people. And of course that would just be an agreement between the victims and the perpetrator, and depending on the severity of the cases, it may be in everybody's interest, perhaps, to not make these things come out to light in those cases. But in some cases, those kinds of agreements are not going to happen, and then it's just wonderful that we now have a climate where that option is available, where it wasn't before.
Yeah, and I do think we're making progress in certain ways, because if you look at Garrison, Keillor, and Matt Lauer, it was the time is shrinking between receipt of report of abuse or whatever and action of any kind, because this was all before it was covered up. It was non-disclosure agreements, and now it's like Matt Lauer somebody finds out because they're doing a story at multiple publications about Matt Lauer and they're calling about it, and Monday rolls around and they get this report. They say for the first time, okay, but he had a button under his desk that would lock the door from the inside, apparently. So,
wow, is that true?
It's true. It's in Hollywood Reporter or Variety story I read today, or somewhere. But anyway, yeah, that's part of his thing, and somebody had to install that, is all I'm saying. But anyway, the time between when they receive these reports, or when it's made public, or when it actually happens, and he was fired that day. Garrison Keillor was apparently fired immediately. Why do some people get to hang on? It's so unfair what some people get taken away for, and some people just get to keep going for. We have to talk about Trump. You brought up Access Hollywood. Trump, the reason that the people are always, it's just locker room talk, whatever. But he actually, he's applying what he said. He said it. He did it. You know what I mean? He said it. He said he did it, and then he did it. What are you not understanding? And how is he still going? And whatever you want to say about Louie C.K., there is a spectrum, and that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about is you talked about Al Franken, and that's been hard for me to take, of course, because I'm more in line with his thinking about the world, and I've been a fan of his for a long time. But what he did was wrong, and he should not have done that. And I'm frankly okay if he just steps aside. That's fine with me. Somebody else will be appointed that will have a similar politics to him, I'm sure.
In this case, we're lucky because there's a Democratic.
Yes, we're very lucky in that case. That's the person.
What if that weren't the case, though?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What would be the sort of realpolitik kind of equations that we may need to? Is that my phone, actually? But I turned off my ringer. Pardon me. What would be the sort of hardcore pragmatism that we might need to? So Michelle Goldberg, the new writer at the New York Times, wrote a piece recently about just this topic, about how to recognize that because of the Democratic wing's politics, how much of a disadvantage that puts us in when it comes to these situations, where we have a very visible kind of comparison that we can put forth for across the aisle. We've got the current Roy Moore debacle.
Well, yeah, that's the obvious corollary, because
it's so obvious.
Yeah.
And then you've got Al Franken, and so now we're on one side, that tribe does not hold some of the more egalitarian principles that the Democrats do, and so therefore there's a much lower threshold a much lower expectation about what is permissible and what is not.
But isn't that a sad statement that all we ask for is fairness, and all they do, and this showed up with, you mentioned Roy Moore, Project Veritas trying to sting the Washington Post and getting stung right back in your face. But they're not acting in good faith. You know what I mean? They're the things that they say the Christians allow in this Roy Moore thing just sickens me. But they have no standards, and we have to have all the standards. You know, that's totally unfair.
That's the thing. That's what exactly. Well, that's the lack of equity between the two camps is exactly what Michelle Goldberg addressed in her op-ed piece, and that it's tragic. You know, there's an element of tragedy to this where we have to hand out Franken to the dogs right now, kind of knowing that on the spectrum of abuse and of misconduct, at least from what's been reported thus far, and compared to all other men that are under the microscope right now, his is not a very glaring case, and we are handing him over to somewhat. I mean, he hasn't said that he's going to resign yet, but we're kind of like all waiting around right now, going like, well, if there's an outcry for him to resign, I guess we're going to have to let him resign. And so we're doing that because it's based on our principles. And yet, this gives the advantage. We've got a terrible, terrible political situation right now for Democrats, and so we're going to hand over one of our star men, one of our star leaders, who has committed an infraction that is on the absolute lower end of the spectrum, and allow a child molester to not even stay in office, but he'll probably, I don't want to swing anything. I mean, I'm going to hopefully donate $15 to the Alabama Senate campaign to make sure that
the guy that put the KKK in jail for killing black children actually beats the guy who's a child molester. Is that what you're saying? World were ordered correctly, that would be, I wouldn't need to put those 15 in, nor would anyone else. But apparently, there are a bunch of psychopaths in Alabama.
Oh, they're everywhere. Believe me, they're everywhere.
That might be listening to this podcast.
I can't track it that close, but I don't think I have a huge listenership in Alabama. Yeah, I don't think we're going to sway anybody. I don't think you need to worry about swaying the electorate on the Rob Burgess Show in Alabama. It's okay. But yeah,
disparity,
Yeah,
disparity is there's some fuckery there.
Oh, there's absolutely. Yeah.
And so then what to do then as a good law-abiding ideologue, on the left, like what to do with that situation, what to do with Al Franken.
Yeah, and John Conyers, that's another one.
Sure, I think he might be a little bit less sympathetic.
Well, yeah, he's obviously accused of worse, I believe, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he can go too. That's fine. I'm actually okay with that. That's fine. He can go. Al Franken can go. Like you said, thank goodness that somebody will be appointed, probably in at least one of those cases that we would like. Yeah, it's just a lot to deal with. But the Harvey Weinstein thing, I was interested to see, as kind of an outsider of, the entertainment industry, how much of an open secret apparently it was. Apparently it was an open secret. Everybody knew it. It wasn't even a secret. People like Seth MacFarlane made a joke about it. There was a 30 Rock joke about it. David Letterman talked about it. Everybody said this in public, and people were like, and I mean, it's how many more open secrets are there that I don't know about?
I know that's what I'm trying. I'm actually going through my Rolodex right now. My Rolodex right now. I'm going what open secrets are out there? The case with the dynamic there of this sort of open secret that was the Weinstein situation. This is a very familiar playbook, you could say, that happens in, if you just want to downscale it to a family, the way a family will have an open secret. The alcoholic in the family, the mentally ill person, the abuser in the family, the domestic abuser in the family, the woman who shows up to work with a black eye, and like nobody really says anything, or everyone just kind of like there's an element of discomfort behind all of this that is antisocial. And I think human beings, because of especially Americans, because of the way that we're educated, we lack the skill set to be able to negotiate these very, very somewhat complex situations. Because how do you show up for somebody when you know that they've been abused? How do you and if you work with the person that's abusing, or if you know the person is the one that's abusing, how do you take care of that person? How do you show up for that person? If you're within Weinstein's circle, if you're somebody that works in the office, if you're a client, if you're somebody that's done business with Weinstein, and you hear about all these things, and you hear about what, and you know the people that are the supposed victims of all this, how do you maintain the fabric of that power dynamic that is taking care of your work, paying for your rent, making sure that you have followers on Twitter, all of the hallmarks of success? How do you manage that situation without it blowing up in your face, without something horrible happening? Well, the great thing about it right now is that I think now we finally have a guidebook for this. Now we can see, oh yeah, you actually can come out and defend yourself. You actually can come out and say something, and there won't be any repercussions. And that's why in this case, the firings are good. It's a good thing that Garrison Keillor is getting fired. It's a good thing that Matt Lauer is getting fired. Perhaps there's a risk now. I know that Garrison Keillor said that this is I can't remember what the word he used to describe everything that's going on. What was the word? A mania. That's what he said. A day before, he had said it in an op-ed piece that there was a mania that was going on, and
But Louie C made a whole movie about doing this to people. Apparently, that was just about to come out.
Yeah.
Nobody even asked him to do it, and this is the thing they want to do. And it's like the people are almost like tempting fate. Like if I did this and got away with it to any degree, I wouldn't make the focus of my life about that. I would just be like dum 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 going about my day. But apparently these people are so out in the open. That's what I'm talking about with this. Everybody knows, but nobody says it. Whose the responsibility is it to speak up? Is it my responsibility to stick my neck out? I don't see anyone else sticking their neck out.
Well, hopefully, right now, these firings are going to show that.
Well, they have. They have.
Stick your neck out, and there will be a swift, response. And so, if the cases in just today with Matt Lauer and Garrison Keillor are perhaps maybe if those firings are, if it shows that those firings are not really what's the word? Reflective of the severity of the crimes or whatever. Sounds like they are, actually. But let's just say for whatever reason they aren't. I think it's still a good thing that these things are happening because the climate is changing, the culture is changing, and that is actually the most important thing to happen right now. That's the most effective thing to happen is let the culture, let the thinking, let the value set change so that women can be protected because they weren't protected before.
A profound thing my wife once said to me, it was only profound to me because it didn't occur to me, but she's like, when you're a woman, you just have to realize that at any moment you could be assaulted. And if you're in public, that's a possibility. And I don't go through my day thinking that. Even now, really, I don't think it could happen to me. Really. Do you go around? I don't go around like that. But women do all the time. It's they have to just know that this could happen. So like my wife is always noting things that I don't think about, when we're in public like that. Just noticing, oh, we're in a dark corner, and I'm like, oh, we kind of are.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a different way of looking at the world, and I think that a lot of men are finally getting the message. I know it's been a learning experience for me. I'm apparently totally ignorant of how women go through the world. So.
Well, it's a good thing that we have persons such as the woman who posted on YouTube the video of her getting catcalled.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. Mm-hmm.
And also the one who posted, I believe, on Instagram. Every time you could see her face and you could see the guys in the background. it's a good, here's a situation where technology is really helping, because it's sending out the message that, during the day we walk by a construction site and you hear about these things all day. Not a day goes by where I don't get catcalled, all of that sort of stuff. But when you actually see it, when you actually see the guys in motion doing it in that way, with that degree of regularity, it really drives home the point. It really does.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm a father. I have a son and a daughter. So, how do I raise them? What am I gonna do? This is crazy. This is crazy. I don't know how to tell. I don't know what to tell either of them. Just stay away. Everyone's a danger. Just watch out.
Well, something tells me that they're probably not going to be part of the demographic that we're concerned about right now.
Sure. Yeah, but they're going to be in the world and I think of how my grandparents were infants once and somebody coached them how to treat the other sex and apparently it was horrible. But it seems like we are progressing. I think this is hopefully it's getting better.
Well, there was also another piece written by Stephen Marsh in the Sunday Review at the Times, entitled "The Unexamined Brutality of the Male Libido." And this is a great piece because it does exactly what you're talking about, how this question that you're asking yourself: how am I going to tell my children the right thing so that they don't subscribe to this sort of behavior, this mentality? And he's addressing this very idea in the piece, but more on a nationwide scope, in the sense of all men now need to somehow search deeper within themselves, peel back some onion layers within their psyche, to realize what constitutes their own sense of masculinity. If you really ask most men what that is, what makes you a man, the answers that they're going to give you are going to be highly problematic. And we don't teach this stuff, And the piece is great in terms of dissecting all the false kind of prompts that we get in the locker room, in gym class, in high school, that stay with us for the rest of our lives. And it's toxic. It's like a toxic mindset that fathers and teachers and all sorts of role models horribly distort the minds of children with. And we need to that's also another frontier. So it's great that there's this sexual revolution, this sort of somewhat latter-day sexual revolution of we're going to believe women now finally. Wow, couldn't we have thought about that in the 60s when the original sexual revolution? But apparently not. We needed a lot of stuff to happen. So it's happening right now, and that's great. And I think the other frontier is what do the men do now? What are all of us who maybe haven't done horrible things like that, but have done bad things or problematic things, or maybe not even any of those, but have certain attitudes about the opposite sex, about their sexuality, about their masculinity? What kind of questions should we be asking ourselves right now? I think this is a very, very important time for men to start taking inventory of all those mindsets.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's almost in retrospect you feel like, oh, I shouldn't, but by the standards of maybe the time or whatever. Not to excuse yourself in any way, but at the time that's why it happened, because it seemed like something you could do.
There's so much umbrage with so-called political correctness, and there's the frequent bromide, which is, oh, you're so sensitive, or oh, you want me to be so sensitive to all these things. Oh, I can't say. I have to tiptoe through the daisies, so on and so forth. And it's when I think about these, all I hear when I hear those things is, oh, you are so terrified of examining yourself that you need to push back in this way. I think this kind of reckoning with men will, if it's encouraged more, it's going to experience a lot of pushback from men who probably aren't in therapy, aren't in the habit of examining themselves. And that, I think the form that it will take will be like, well, what the hell do you want? Everybody else is doing it. Or, well, what do you want? I'm not supposed to know what or you're too sensitive. You want me to do this, but that's all up to you. Why should I have to do that? Which are all ridiculous responses, in my opinion. I think that there's only one proper response, which is, oh shit, I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt.
Yeah.
Sorry that what I did hurt your feelings. How do we move forward from there?
Well, just assume that you don't know. Just if you don't know, you learn something. You learn something new. It's okay. Just you learn something new.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that. Okay, I'll do that from now on.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, a lot of what we're talking about is toxic masculinity, really. And another guest of the Rob Burgess Show, Jared Yates Sexton, is writing a book right now about this. But toxic masculinity is really at the root of a lot of this. It's just recognizing that in yourself and recognizing that that's the culture. You don't notice it because it's everywhere. It's kind of like white supremacy in the South. Apparently right now.
Sure.
It's just the air you breathe. It's what's going on, and I think that the thing for men now is we get to like take a look at ourselves and be like, man, that was like what I thought was like, it was not. Somebody, there was another person on the other end of that, and it's weird that like we're just recognizing women as human, and that's like. That's some sort of revolution. It almost seems weird to me in a certain way. Like it's like the big change is, oh, women are people too. What? Like that's it's crazy to me.
That's where the value of all of what's going on, of this sexual revolution, of this sort of wave that's happening. That's the real value right there, is to have this this raising of consciousness. Now, conversely, there's also, not to mention too many pieces, but obviously I've been reading up a lot on all this stuff, but there is another piece called Sex, Consent, and the Dangers of Misplaced Scale, written by Masha Gessen.
She's good. I like her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the New Yorker. It came out yesterday. It is an incredible read. And this notion that she has about misplaced scale is actually useful, and so she is actually expressing something similar, according to what Garrison Keillor infamously uttered 20 years ago, where apparently he said that if you take sexual harassment out of the equation, then there's nobody's going to flirt anymore. So yeah, it's quite funny, and so
wow.
She's kind of like saying something very similar, that there's this notion of misplaced scale, and for her, she feels the Al Franken case is an absolute patent case of misplaced scale. But she also mentioned something very, very, which for me is of obvious topical interest. It's a band called Pine Grove. I've never heard of them, but she mentioned them, and I looked up their Twitter. Apparently, their singer is getting fired from the band or suspended. I don't want to misrepresent this group by saying that he was fired if he wasn't, so I'm actually reading right now just to make sure that I have the story correctly. But she's saying, she's claiming that this, not claiming, but she's stating that the band Pine Grove was suspending its tour. Actually, they're not kicking it out, they're just suspending their tour because their frontman, Evan Stephens Hall, has been accused of sexual coercion, and apparently he, on the band's Facebook page, came out and made a huge statement saying, I have been flirtatious with fans and on a few occasions been intimate with people that I've met on tour. I've reached the conclusion now that that's not ever appropriate, even if they initiate it. There will always be an unfair power dynamic at play in these situations, and it's not okay for me to ignore that.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Now, if this is the truth, if what he's saying is the truth, then my whole bandmates, every single guy that was ever in a rock band is truly fucked right now. And because
that was part of the deal, right? Of becoming a rock star, yeah.
DNA, exactly. It's all of that. It has been taken as a given that something along, you could call it almost, and I don't mean to minimize this, but you could call it a kind of statutory rape, where instead of the age differential being the thing that makes it, it's just what he was saying, which is the power differential.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's nowhere. It's in the stratospheres.
Yeah. And so, she raises a good point about this, and she's saying, is this not also an example of misplaced scale, where now we're treating a situation like that where there's like utter consent, absolutely, totally explicit consent being given between both, mutual consent, and yet we're still treating it as potentially abusive behavior or misconduct. I can relate with where he's coming from. Because this whole wave has truly called up a lot of my past to me about the things that I saw and the things that I did while I was in the music industry, and the behavior that I thought that I was entitled to, that I believed that I deserved, and that in my mind I was like, well, this is what's supposed to happen. I can fairly assume for the moment that I am not repressing any kind of instances where something along the lines of, like, even an Al Franken was part of my past. I think rock stars are somewhat fortunate, at least when it comes to this sort of topic, in that typically they're in a situation where the women are the ones initiating it. Because they're such huge fans of the music that, and it's a sexual thing for them. It's become sexualized. So the chance to be with that person is something that's really favorable to them, and I can, that's my story, very much to the T. I really waved that flag for years while I was in Interpol. And so I think back to everything that I saw and everything that I did, not everything, everything that I can remember that I saw and did. And I really, truly have a completely different perspective on all of that. Because I did believe back then, this is part of the deal. This is what you're supposed to do. If this isn't the case, then it's almost like you're not even making a salary. And that was sort of what, like, the mentality was for me. And not just for me, but everyone else that I commiserated.
Sure.
And now I'm really grateful for this shift, because it's giving me the opportunity to really kind of like shake all of that old value set off. I can sort of see it for what it is. It's not really, I'm saying this from the vantage point of someone who's essentially living a civilian life right now. I'm not in the music industry, and I'm not in the public eye, certainly not to the extent that I was when I was in the band. But so there's an element.
Well, I mean, you've been on the Rob Burgess Show twice, but go ahead.
yeah, of course. Count that, sorry for that, Rob.
I mean,
but what if I kind of am really, I feel really glad that I'm not in the public eye, or that I'm not in the music industry right now. That I've had a chance to step away from all this stuff, that the madness did not get too crazy, because I shudder to think what it might have been if I had stayed. Because the thing with the Weinstein, the thing with the reckoning that I'm speaking of, is really about realizing how you can really lose yourself in those industries where there's such power that's given to performers. There is so much risk in losing yourself, in losing your identity, in losing your sense of what's right and what's wrong. And I just consider myself fortunate to have been able to, as best as I know, evade a lot of the more worse aspects of that, of those behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, if you're in the public light now, you're getting examined, like if you're doing this, if you're still like if you're still you back then, now you're getting looked at pretty hard, I imagine, right? Like if you were still, Carlos D in Interpol, guess what?
I'd be quaking in my boots. I'd be quaking in my boots.
Yeah, you would. Of course you would, because people are like, who's next? Who's next?
Exactly.
Oh, him.
And rightly so, though.
Sure. I mean, I'm not even saying that's wrong. Like you said, that's the thing we're living through. That's the change. But yeah.
And I mean, by the definition of Evan Stevens Hall of Pine Grove, that there should be many, many, many guys right now that should be quaking in their boots, or at least having to face the music the way that he is. The thing is that what he's espousing is a complete 180-degree turn in terms of what's understood as permissible sexual behavior in that arena, that particular arena.
Right.
I mean, what's going? Someone might be able to say, well, what's next? Is the porn industry going to also have situations like this? Like maybe there's tons of inappropriate behavior there as well.
Oh, sure.
How are they going to garner sympathy?
Yeah. How's the woman at Waffle House who, I worked at a call center a couple years ago, and let me tell you, that place, if there was a scandal about this place, it would have been 10 times worse than anything. It was just but these people don't get the media attention as much. There was a thing in the New York Times I read about the restaurant industry. We don't hear about that because it's not. Oh, yeah. There's no. If that guy's doing it, okay. Well, that's dishes need to be washed. So, nobody when it's Gwyneth Paltrow and when it's these people that are known, all of a sudden it's a thing. But
the thing is, what's missing here is sort of like an equal employment opportunity type commission. So instead of it being about opportunity, it has to be about swift action and protection. I don't think that there are places that women can go to for that level of protection, where there's a safe zone, even for restaurants. I think with public figures, it's their status as a known entity, as a public persona, that gives them that protection. Because if a story breaks, everyone in the nation knows it, and so the incentive to keep things under wraps is huge. Whereas if you're just working at a restaurant and you're not famous, if a story breaks out, there's ways to control that, right? So what we need is more like an agency of some sort, some kind of protecting arm that can assist women in lower profile work, like the service industry, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. But what do you think, going back to the kind of the entertainment industry, what do you think we should do with the art of the people that have done these things? Okay, so John Lennon beat his wife. Do I have to stop listening to the Beatles now? Woody Allen, I love Annie Hall. It's one of my favorite movies. Do I have to stop watching that for the rest of my life? You know what I mean? Do I have to, what do we do? Like a Pulp Fiction? It was produced by Harvey Weinstein. Can I not watch Pulp Fiction anymore?
I think no. I think that's not really feasible. Actually,
no.
Disney was a unrepentant racist. And that's Walt Disney. So no, it's tricky. It is tricky. I love Apocalypto, the movie. And I can't stand Mel Gibson. I can't stand what he says, and I can't stand his beliefs. But I have to recognize that it's a fantastic movie. So the work is there. If the work is fueled... So here's something that I've also noticed is I'm looking at old SNL skits on YouTube because they've just kind of released just about every single SNL skit. And one thing that I'm noticing is some things are just not funny anymore. It's weird. And I think that if I put on a Louie C monologue where he started talking about some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, men are the single biggest threat to women in their lives. That was a joke that he made. Like now, in light of this, it's kind of lost its humor. It's just not as funny any longer. Anything having to do with workplace antics, I'm kind of like the skit, the evil boss skit from that Will Ferrell does so brilliantly, from an old school SNL skit. Kind of not as funny as it was, because now it's like, oh my god, like everyone we've seen the evil boss in real life. When these things actually are mirrored a little too closely, I think that's where it gets problematic. But a movie like Pulp Fiction is, no, I don't think so. I don't think that we stopped listening to John Lennon. Because I think that the behavior that we know of the artists that was problematic, there's a way of sifting it from the work. That's my dog. He might bark. He's barking in agreement, I hope. I just said. We'll just assume that he is. I think, in a case like Pulp Fiction or John Lennon, we can separate the work. It's when you can't separate the work that I think it gets problematic.
Yeah. Well, I heard an interview with on Preet Bharara, the fired U.S. attorney. He has a podcast. He was interviewing, what's his name? Freaks and Geeks and 40-Year-Old Virgin, Judd Apatow. He was interviewing Judd Apatow, and he was talking about how he can't watch The Cosby Show anymore because he knows that The Cosby Show was just a front for Bill Cosby to like drug women and then have sex with them while they're passed out. Like that was like, he was like, I'm going to present myself as this good guy. And like he just like, there's no way you can watch that show now and be like anything other than revulsion, because you know what's going on when the cameras aren't rolling. So I don't know, it kind of spoils it, and it's like it's not even like you don't want it to change, but like, okay. And I never really cared about that show, but he was using that as an example. But
no, that's a good example. I think in the case of Cosby, we have a situation where if we're talking about a spectrum, he's completely on the opposite side of Al Franken. I mean, what he did was egregious and on a level that is just baffling. That someone could do those things for so long and for so regularly. So I think the extremity of the crime, the crimes that he committed, and the level of pain and harm that he's brought into the world as a result, and because exactly as Preet said, that the front of the show, or at least the what do you call it when something is what the show was purporting to be, which was this sort of very good-natured man. Now we can't separate that. We can't believe. We had to believe just a little bit in the truth of that for the performer. So in order for Bill Cosby to work as a character in that show, we had to believe that Bill Cosby, the real guy, was perhaps just a little bit more flawed than Huxtable. Right? Just a little bit. But it had to have some of that. Clearly, we've seen that he's eradicated any possibility of that. So no, that's not possible.
Yeah.
I think in the case with Louie C.K., he's joking about all of that stuff.
Right.
Part of the humor of the joke is like, okay, but we know that you're not really doing all of that stuff.
Right, exactly.
If you really were doing all that stuff, that's not funny.
Like you're just thinking this, you're not actually doing this, right?
Exactly. I think it's a big difference.
Oh yeah, it's a difference in approach, but it's like it's two different tracks you can take. You can either like say I'm a great guy. Look at all I don't know if you've ever researched the Jimmy Savile case in England.
No.
Oh, well, if you want to just be horrified beyond belief, just look up the name Jimmy Savile and just be whisked away to hell because it's horrible. Anyway, he did unspeakable things that there's like a 34 megabit MP or PDF from Scotland Yard on my hard drive somewhere about it that I was researching once. But anyway, it's horrible what he did. But he did all this charity work, and he he was known for how much he gave to the public good. But this is in retrospect, it's of course he did that. Why else would you do this much charity work if you weren't trying to throw people off the scent?
It's conspicuous.
Yeah.
It's conspicuous charity work.
Mm-hmm. But well, you're right. It can go the other way with Louie C.K. And the thing is, it's almost like I'm going to get you to I need to talk about this with somebody, and I'm going to talk about this with you. But it's going to be in this way where I have plausible deniability of it being real. It's just this is something people think weird things, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah, boy, we've talked about a lot, but
yeah, well, there'll probably be even more to talk about, tomorrow. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. It's there's no telling where this is going to go. Oh well, if you were still in the entertainment music business today, but knowing this about. Are you just not supposed? You mentioned, going back to the power dynamic a little bit. I mean, what are people really supposed to do, though? I mean, are you only supposed to be with other people who are in your same famousness level? Is that how it is equal? Can you not do that? Can you not go between somebody?
You cannot do that.
You cannot do that at all. You don't think?
You cannot do it. Is what I'm saying.
You cannot do it at all. I'm saying that I think that happens a lot, though, so that seems like a pretty big change.
Well, just from my own experience, I knew many of my peers in other bands who were very, very diligent and respectful, and I never saw them go home with anybody. I never saw them go into a stray hotel room or anything like that. I was decidedly on the opposite side of that set of behaviors.
But you weren't alone, is what I'm saying. You're not an outlier, really.
I think I'm not an outlier, and I wasn't an outlier. And in many ways, I felt that part of the allure of a rock star's life was sort of the rake, the libertine, the man who was able to just kind of be with whoever he wanted to be, because kind of Marquis de Sade kind of. That was the whole thing that I was doing back then. It was I put this sort of flair on it, this sort of literary flair on it. To me, it just was all about decadence and the fulfilling of your pleasure, your need to be satiated and so forth. Of course, I mean, I was young. I had no idea of consequences or anything like that. So all of those ideas are based on a complete inability to understand the notion of consequence or maturity. I mean, if you haven't lived long enough, you just don't know about consequences. So naturally, you mix that with rock music, and you have what you have. There's a sense in which someone might say, well, if you take that away, you won't really have the rock music. It's part of the spirit of rock music that it has all of this element of danger, this element of risk, this element of petulance. So if you took away the permissiveness there, then what would you have? I don't know. I don't necessarily know the answer to that question. I also don't know how practical it would be to expect young men to say no to women night after night. I know what it's like to be on tour, and I understand the stress level and how lonely it can get out there. Can be there.
I've heard the Bob Seger song. I've heard all about it. So I understand what you're saying.
I bet you do.
Yeah, right. Oh, absolutely. I'm right there with you. But on a lighter note, I guess, since we're talking about this, what did you think when you heard that Anthony Weiner used the alias Carlos Dengler?
Oh God.
I have to know.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. Well, it's two letters. Just changing my name. That you just have to change. You have to omit the L and change the E to an A, and you've got Carlos Dengler. And I would get texts from friends whenever something would come up saying, "So sorry, buddy," because it it is somewhat in fact, someone trolled me on Twitter and like, what are you, deranged Anthony Weiner? You know, and his actual surname doesn't help either.
Right, exactly. Did you ever watch that documentary, Weiner?
No.
Oh, you have to see it. That guy just lights himself on fire in public again and again. It never ends.
I know. It's almost like he's just like, how am I going to just lose everything? Please tell me.
I know I got away with it for a third time, but I'm going to roll those dice just one more time.
No, I mean, in a case like his, I think he was talking really specifically about addiction.
Oh, clearly, it's beyond his like control to the compulsion overtakes him.
But I'll tell you, Rob, I wasn't thrilled about it.
I know.
I wasn't entirely thrilled. Please pick something else, please. You fucked things up for. It was only when it was a news item. I remember once on the Post, it was on the cover of the Post, Carlos Dengler. And I was like, what? That's a double take. Like, that's my name.
Well, this can't be good. I don't know why this is happening, but I don't like this.
Not be good. And then there was a part of me that thought, like, didn't I pick that name? Very easily.
Are you saying that you zigged when you should have zagged? You went with Carlos D, and you should have gone with Carlos Dengler from the beginning?
I should have thought about it a little bit longer. If I just change the E to an A and take out the L, dude, that is a crazy good stage name.
That's not bad at all. That's not all bad. But the funny thing is, then later when Anthony Weiner was sexting, he would use Carlos D at that point.
Well, yeah, then he would have to switch.
He would have to do that then.
He'd say Carlos Dengler is taken.
But what communicates what I wanted to communicate? Let's see.
Yeah, exactly.
So, man, well, is there anything else I didn't ask you about? I feel like we went all over the place, but that was a good hour.
I think we covered a lot of great points. I think, to be continued.
Please, yeah.
I think, the time has come. I'm going to continue reflecting on, what the kind of life that I led, back then. I need to be open for anything that this requires of us guys who have had it too good for too long and have been insensitive and have not taken into consideration other people's feelings and done worse in some cases, degraded and missed other people's feelings, and it's time for that to stop. So I welcome that, and there's obviously more is going to be revealed throughout all of this, because it's not going to stop tonight. Mm-mm. It's not going to stop tonight.
No, absolutely
I'm writing
not.
a book too, and I'm sure I'll be facing the music when it comes to writing as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. Well, please stay in touch. You're welcome back anytime, like I said.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming back on, and hope you have a good.
My pleasure, Rob.
Yeah, good rest of your night, and it'll be up on Fridays. So.
Sounds good. All right, you have a good night too.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye.
Take care.
If you enjoy this podcast, there are several ways to support it. I have a Patreon account, which can be found at www.patreon.com/Rob Burgess Show Patreon. I hope you'll consider supporting in any amount. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast everywhere it's available, which includes iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Facebook, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, and RSS. It really helps. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgessshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. Until next time.